Hey guys, welcome to what will be my first restoration project at the new house, which is a German 1938 Kleinempfanger. Sorry if I'm mangling that pronunciation. This was, from brief stuff I've read online, it was a low-cost receiver for the German people to listen to propaganda. I'm not going to go into the whole history of it. You can look it up yourself on Wikipedia and other places. There are websites devoted just to this radio, and I don't really want to get into the politics and the history of it. Suffice it to say, it's a 30s German radio of a very simple design. So, I was sent this to restore, and I got this, which I believe is all complete and intact, and a spare chassis with one tube, and then the contents of this box. Well, we'll look over all this more in a moment, but first I want to take a step back and give you a little overview of what's been going on in the new basement. Well, I already took a look inside this box, so I know what's in here, and it's not quite what I was expecting. So the owner of the radio told me he had gotten a replacement tube for it. So there are two tubes that go with this radio. We got one here, and well, obviously that one's missing. Well, these tubes are kind of scarce. So it turns out what he had gotten was actually this, which is two tubes and some external components that can substitute for that tube. Like so. There are some notes in here. That is what is inside here. The German, the one semester I took in college has pretty much all been forgotten, but I believe ersatz mit means basically fabricated with or made with two 12SH1P tubes, I'm guessing. And this shows how they are wired up. So, not what I was expecting, but I can do a little research online and look up what those tubes are and see how the circuit might work. And here's a diagram showing the whole radio with another note. I don't know if that means I should be installing that resistor. Oh, I see. So someone took a photograph of it and labeled all the component values. Oh, that's handy. So let's see how well that matches up to the real deal. Okay, so it looks like somebody's already been in here on this one and done a little recapping. That guy I suspect is an original, but these two in parallel are certainly not. I see some variation too with these resistors down here in the corner. Don't quite match the diagram. But anyways, let's take a look at the one inside here, because this is just going to be if we need to, if we need to scavenge parts off of it or whatnot. I'm hoping the one in here is in intact enough condition we won't even need to do anything with this guy. I just removed the two screws that were holding the back on. There should be three, but one wasn't there. Clearly modern screws that were cut off. So don't know what the originals were like, but those are not the originals. So here we go. Alright, well, that's what the original tube looked like. So we got a little guy here and a big one over on this side. That is a metallic coating that was sprayed on to act as a shield. I don't know if those spots are because the tube got really hot or maybe it just deteriorates over time. I believe this has been recapped to some extent in the past. These are modern replacements up here. Not sure what holds this in. Looks like it's just sitting on a little shelf here. And here's a speaker, which has one very, very notable feature. It is not metal. That is a composite material. So keep the cost down because of the war effort. And it's also a high impedance speaker. This is like a throwback to 20 speakers in the U.S. where Sorry for the interruption. As I was saying, this is a high impedance speaker of a couple thousand ohms, and I believe it's in the plate circuit of the output tube. And this is a reed type movement that moves the cone in and out, so no need for a large permanent magnet or electromagnet on it. And this would be, I believe, the dropper resistor. This was designed to run on several line voltages of like 220 or 120, so I should be able to run this directly off the line if I use the right tap on it. This wiring is a bit deteriorated. Well, anyways, let's pull this thing out. Yeah, I can definitely see it's been recapped. An orange drop and a modern mica cap down there. What's holding it on is these knobs, which are held on by a couple small set screws. Well, I'll get those off and pull the chassis out. Alright, here it is. I ended up clipping the speaker leads to get it out. And most definitely has been work done to it, and I found one problem immediately. This is broken loose. It's supposed to attach to this control here. So maybe it is a good thing that I've got the other chassis, because that one is intact. So it's a rather odd assembly. Two coils, and you can control the coupling between them. I believe that's to control the regeneration. So for sure, that is a problem. I believe this is a band switch. I'll have to verify that. And then this is a tuning device. So I guess this would, in effect, control the volume, unless this is... Actually, this looks a little different. No, that's not a switch. I think that's a variable compression capacitor. I don't know. All the controls on this thing are goofy, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, I best dig up a schematic and see how this thing is designed to work. And we do have one transformer in this, but a fairly small one, so not a whole lot of metal. And as you can see, the whole thing is built on a piece of phenolic looking material. Well, as I said, there are websites dedicated to this radio with a wealth of info, including schematics, so plenty of reference material to help guide me. And I think this would be fairly easy to repair. I'm guessing the control was turned too hard and broke it, because there's really no stop to it. In other words, if you just turn this too hard, you can just slam this coil into this one and break it off the shaft. It'll work something like that when it's all together. So I think a little glue will take care of that. And let's hope nothing else is broken. So I'm sure that this is a replacement power cord. Yeah, or I should say the power cord, I think might be original, but the plug has definitely been replaced with one for an American Electrical System, whereas this guy still has the European style plug on it. Here's one of those websites I mentioned that covers these radios. It's in German, unfortunately, but schematics are pretty universal. So here's the model that I've got. You can also download the full manual in PDF format. And here is the schematic. So, I believe this is the tube that was made up from two separate tubes, some external components. Plugs into the socket there, and that would be the other tube. I think I got that right. So I'll have to hunt around and find a translated version of this. Phil Nelson at antiqueradio.org did an especially nice write-up of this radio, and it's all in English. I'll put a link in the description. What's especially nice is he explained the controls. So briefly, the controls consist of two knobs and a tuning dial. Most radio users will find the controls somewhat baffling. Yes, I did indeed. It does have two bands, but there's no band switch. It's just a single dial. As you rotate the Bakelite dial from extreme left to right, it displays one range from 0 to 100 until you reach the middle, where it goes back down from 100 to 0. So, two bands, one dial. Innovative. Well, I mean, the whole goal of this was to keep costs down. See how it is to actually operate in practice. So the other controls, one is the regeneration feedback, as I suspected. I believe that's one where you can move the coil in and out. And the other, he thinks, is to remove hum and other interference to achieve the best sound. Now, he did not actually restore his to operating condition, but I did do a nice job of explaining the details of the construction and the operation of it. Here's a schematic well, in English. So here's that multi-function tube, I believe. And there's the other tube. So yeah, there's the triode and there's the pentode. Now they made several versions of this, and as I was looking through at that German site, I might have pulled up a different version. The schematic sure looked different, but I'm pretty sure this is the right schematic. So one of the controls I show here is a variable resistor. So that weird stacked thing that I wasn't sure if it was a variable capacitor or what might actually be a variable resistor. Strange design for sure. Here we've got the tap for the different line voltages. The tube filaments are wired directly in series. Let's keep our fingers crossed that they are good. And here's that high impedance speaker. It says 17 kΩ. I'm thinking that the DC resistance, the impedance is 17,000 ohms at 1,000 hertz. DC resistance is 2,000 ohms. And there's a 2 meg resistor up here, so yeah, basically that is the plate load resistor, the speaker itself. Interesting. We've got the capacitor values here, so a couple electrolytics, 4 microfarad. I might use plastic film on those. Just when you get into the small values of electrolytic these days, they make plastic film in high values that are pretty darn small, and the prices aren't too bad, so I think that's what I'll use for these. I'm not sure what the DC voltage would be at this point, but, well, a half-wave rectifier right off the DC line. Probably a 250 volt cap. That should be sufficient. These others, I'll use probably plastic film for, I think it's 4,000 picofarad, and probably mica for the rest. Now that one already does have some new mica caps in there. I'll confirm the values off the schematic and leave them alone if they're the right value. 0.9 microfarad, I'll use a plastic film for that. 10N, that's probably 10 nanofarads, something you don't see too often on American schematics. Usually just go microfarad and picofarad. The one between those is nanofarad, or more commonly known as 0.01 microfarad, more commonly known in the US, that is. And the resistors look all pretty straightforward. 1 meg, 1.5 meg, 2 meg, 0.1 meg, otherwise known as 100 kilo ohms. And 0.2 meg or 200 kilo ohms. Yeah, it's a nice touch. There's a fuse in there. Looks like 0.2 amps or 200 milliamps. Alright, cool. So I think I got all the information in hand, although I will do a little more research because there are some restoration threads in various forums around the world. So again, this is something new for me. I typically just work on American stuff. Well, this is German, and because of the interest in the war, they're all over the world now. So I found restoration forums in Britain and other countries, and there's a whole lot of them for sale. This is the Italian eBay, for example. So there's a whole bunch of them, and gives some idea of the value of these. There's somebody selling just the chassis and just the speaker. Alright, cool. So, time for me to do a little more research. I hope you enjoyed this first look at the DKE 38 radio.